So at the end of the previous video, I referenced these two figures and I said we were going to spin them off into a separate topic. And the reason for that is yesterday morning, the dog and I came outside and I was getting things ready to shoot a video and it began to rain. And I was like, doggone it, I really want to keep the backdrop consistent for these videos. I could do a voiceover video with a lot of graphics in it instead. So I started prepping my graphics and I actually began recording the voiceover. But the more I told the story, the stronger the deja vu felt. And I was like, I've prepped this before. I may have shot a little bit of this before. So I just stopped. I stopped mid-recording on the voiceover. I went back and reviewed the Toyaholic playlist, and I found pretty much the tale that I wanted to tell was told in a little bit here and a little bit here and a little bit here across 3 different Toyaholic videos from 2021. And at that point I was like, I actually told that story better then than what I was planning to tell it now. I should take those videos and do a cut down and we'll just film a new beginning and a new ending. So here we go. So just to set this up, one of the most egregious oversights in the vintage Kenner Star Wars line was the lack of a Governor Tarkin. And we've all heard the excuse that they didn't want to sell figures of characters who died in the movie. So no Uncle Owen, no Aunt Beru, no Biggs. Yeah, well, they sold me a Ben Kenobi, so what's up with that? Eventually the retro line did address this, and it's a pretty doggone good figure. But long before he was available, I made my own using a Kenner Imperial officer. And it actually was very, very useful for whoever dies with the most toys wins. I don't think I could have adequately told the tale without that character. I also had made, before whoever dies the most toys wins, a quasi-General Veers figure, and he proved useful for scenes where I needed just like a gray-suited Imperial officer. But notice that I didn't make a tag or a Mati prior to shooting the "I find your lack of faith disturbing" scene. I used the General Veers figure. I did eventually make tag and Mati, sort of, but this archival clip will explain why it must have been after whoever dies with the most toys wins. So Sherman set the Wayback Machine for 4 years ago, the Toyaholic playlist.
I remember conversations with my neighbor Craig about figures we wished Kenner would make from the Star Wars movies. And for some reason, we always phrased it as, if I could save the life of the president of Kenner, I would want. And top of the list for me and Craig was always Grand Moff Tarkin. I did a custom version of the figure, obviously both using the Imperial Commander body as the starting point. In some respects, theirs is better. I kind of like mine in some respects. I also did a Imperial Commander in the gray, similar recipe, and you can tell just how loose the limbs are on this guy. I always tried to use beater figures for my custom projects, but one thing that I did with these guys was I made additional heads for them. I can't find the heads at the moment, but the reason being that around the time the Empire Strikes Back figures came out, like this Imperial Commander, the heads were hollow and the bodies had a post, and you could just pop the heads off and swap them around. I took 2 figures, one from G.I. Joe, one was a Fisher-Price Adventure person with the sideburns, and I cut their heads off and I hollowed them out so they would fit on this shaft, and I made Mati and Tag that could be put on these 2 bodies. So I never could have Tarkin and Mati and Tag all at the same time. I only had 2 gray bodies. See if I can get this guy's head back on without breaking that post, as has happened to me in the past. When I graduated college in 1992, the graduation gift that I received from my dad was $600 cash, which he specified was to go towards the purchase of a video camera, something that I'd been wanting for quite a while. And I used some other graduation money from other people to go in and buy this Panasonic PV700. I started making a movie with my vintage Star Wars toys. The name of that movie is Whoever Dies with the Most Toys Wins. This is the actual water bottle given to me by 2 of my college buddies after they had seen my collection, and they went out of town and saw this at a gas station. They said, we were thinking of you when we saw this. And the opening shot, the camera does a pedestal down in front of this water bottle to the tune of the Alfred Newman 20th Century Fox fanfare. So it goes, whoever dies with the most toys, Wins. It's the only shot in the movie that has live sound. The rest of it I synced music to picture later, but that one I needed the timing of trying to make those be lyrics. Remember, as a kid, thinking how cool it would be to erect the Death Star in the big empty back of my parents' station wagon and play with the Death Star as we're driving around town. Oh wow, I found the piece of pipe that I made from a bendy straw. Oh, silver paint just flecked all off of that. Man, I haven't thought about that in years. This was a prop that I made for my movie, Whoever Dies with Most Toys Wins. And the piers, we have hit the mother load of Dianogas. 4 of them. And you know what? I saw another one the other day somewhere else. I didn't realize I had that many. Wow. It's kind of neat. Look at the subtle color differences on them. One's darker, one's lighter. But all it needs now is a Dianoga, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5. And I just popped that and it broke. And I was just heartsick. I'll tell you why I was heartsick. I'd already broken one of those when I was 9 or maybe 10 years old. But my sister, who, if I'm 10, she was 18. She's like, oh, I know what to do. So she takes off this assembly, and inside of it was this broken piece that people now refer to as the firing pin. She gets some brown paper, and she gets some twine and some other things, and I'm still thinking, you know, she's got a way to like tie it back together or wrap the brown paper around it. She's going to repair this item. No. She puts it in a little jewelry box with a little piece of cotton, and she wraps it up, and she addresses it to Kenner, and she mails it off to them. And we're expecting that we're gonna get an intact firing pin back in the mail, and we're gonna put it back in this, and we're gonna put it back in the floor of the Death Star, and instead, we get a box yay big with the entire top floor of the Death Star and the gunnery chair and the gun. That's what they gave us for mailing them those 2 little pieces. Years later, I painted the broken one brown to be the barge gun from Return of the Jedi when I made a custom Slave Leia. And now, back to present day.
Now here's the reason that I'm not just resurrecting those videos and putting them in this playlist. Because the epiphany that I had recently was not about that broken Death Star and turning that into the Jabba the Hutt gun, which doesn't appear in Whoever Dies with Most Toys Wins. No. It's about the piece I took off of the gunnery chair. I cut the chair off years ago. And the chair shows up in a couple of places in Whoever Dies with Most Toys Wins as Tarkin's chair. Somehow or another, I sawed this off. I don't remember what tool I used. It could use a decent bit of sanding and maybe even a coat of paint there, but that's still the cut marks from where there were pieces of plastic sticking off of this. And I tried to make it look as symmetrical as possible. You would think that I would favor this side and have this side on camera more, but I think in the shots in Whoever Dies Most Toys Wins, it almost always has that part visible there. And the reason that you needed a chair for your Star Wars figures, number one, there wasn't a chair on the Jabba sail barge gun, so it needed to be taken off. But then it's like, well, what do I do with it now? Well, it turned out to be very useful. There weren't actually a lot of places for your Kenner Star Wars action figures to sit down. This is one of the only ones I can think of, unless you want to pop the seats out of the land speeder, and I probably have done that in a video before. There are a couple of other shots in Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins where action figures are sitting on something, and I just had to improvise. On board the Falcon, when Luke and Ben are practicing with the training remote, it cuts to Han, sitting there in the, I call it luck pose, but I didn't want him to just be sitting on his butt on the deck of the Millennium Falcon. You know, he's in that chair in the movie, so I kind of cast around the room, and I'm like, what can I use, what can I use? Ah, these chairs in the Cobra Moray are removable. Yet another G.I. Joe toy showing up in Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins. So I popped out a chair, put it in the Falcon, put Han on it, boom, Bob's your uncle. And there's one shot in Ben Kenobi's hut when Luke Skywalker needed to be looking like he was sitting down on a stool or something. But to get the height just the way I wanted it, it only needed to be like yay tall. I'll glance around the room and I'm like, huh, 9-volt battery. So yeah, Luke's sitting on a 9-volt battery in that shot. Hey, sweet girl. But then here's the weird part. Here's the epiphany part. After Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins in 95, 96, this gravitated over towards my Expanded Universe figures, and it was used with Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now, I had made a custom Grand Admiral Thrawn, which was virtually an identical recipe to making Tarkin, with the addition of some Lego epaulets that I cut off of a little tiny Lego pirate and glued them on here. That was my first Thrawn. And then, of course, the Expanded Universe Thrawn came out. I think I actually made one more Thrawn in between those. But he would always be sitting in this chair with a custom Pelian standing beside of him. And then I fashioned a tree that had a bunch of Issa Lamiri hanging off of it, which were castings from the Expanded Universe Issa Lamiri that I think my friend Louis Inman had made for me. My Expanded Universe figures have been missing for 20 years. The other day, sorting through all this stuff, I found Kyle Katarn. He's the only one that gives me hope that they are still somewhere unaccounted for. But I've looked every logical place since we moved into this house in 2005. And I cannot locate them. I actually have bought replacements for them, hoping that would make them show up, and still can't find them. But what I did find was the tree, and the Issa Lamiri, and the chair. I've always known where those were since the move. So I'm very fortunate that I do still have this Death Star chair, because it could be just as lost as the rest of those EU figures. And here's the other half of what became the Princess Leia and the deck gun that I made and posted on the SWCA so many years ago. Thank you for watching.